and said that Congress has got a lot of things on their mind, but this has to be on their mind. We're here today because we want to call attention to the fact that this is a bloated piece of legislation that's very detrimental to Michigan agriculture, and who's going to pay the price for that if our food is coming from someplace else? I just want you to know that we're not only concerned about the price of fuel and electricity, there are other inputs that will be affected by this. And also the input of not having our consumers able to find jobs to be able to take advantage of Michigan's great agricultural production. Well, I have to share with you, when this first came along, those of us in agriculture were told that you're going to like this because you're going to be able to reap the benefits of this. You're going to be able to sell some of your carbon offsets to industry, and you're going to come out really good on this, so you should support it. How many of you like to go for a ride and see the lush green fields, the apple orchards in bloom, the cherry trees, etc., as you travel through the countryside, the vegetables in the field? Well, you know, those fruit trees and those vegetable fields are not going to qualify. So where we're headed then is the opportunity to plant trees to capture this. Michigan is the second most diverse agriculture in the United States. Overall, this is detrimental to Michigan agriculture. You will find a few farmers, but darn few, who are positioned to move ahead. Just remember that as it is an incentive to plant trees, those trees that produce food for you to eat do not qualify for that planting. Well, again, really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this rally. It's great to see so many people here. I can tell you that if it was raining instead of the sun shining, you would have to find a little more room to stand, because there'd be a whole lot of farmers in here also voicing their opinion on what they think of this. But you know, I'm sure this is not new saying to you. You have to make hay while the sun is shining. And it is a beautiful day out there, and they know that you understand their side of the story and will help us as we move forward to try and convince our senators that the right thing to do for Michigan, the only thing to do for Michigan, whether it's jobs, agriculture, or pulling Michigan out of its economic slump, is to vote no on this piece of legislation. Thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Wayne. You know, you're going to hear a lot of studies about this legislation, that it's going to cost 50,000 jobs. Then there's another study that says 20,000. There's another one they'll say something else. But let me ask you, everyone here, a question. This is Michigan. Can we afford to lose one more job in this state? No. We've lost 500,000 jobs in 10 years.
No way.
We cannot keep this up. This bill is not going to help us. I'd like to introduce at this time Scott Hagerstrom. He's the Michigan Director for the Americans for Prosperity, and he his organization represents a great number of hardworking taxpayers across the state. Scott?
Thank you. Scott Hagerstrom. I'm the State Director for Americans for Prosperity. We're dedicated to free markets. We have over 35,000 activists here in Michigan and over 700,000 activists nationwide. We're only about 5 years old, and we're growing thanks to people like you that are coming out and being active. Because if you don't speak up, and if you don't come out, and you don't call your legislator, do you know who's going to be contacting your legislator and putting their input into legislation?
Yeah, we'll find out.
Lobbyists, taxpayer-funded lobbyists. What do you think of taxpayer-funded lobbyists? Ooh. That's why we need you to speak up and call your legislators. You know, this is a very personal fight for me. My grandfather and uncles had retired from Great Lakes Steel. My dad did his apprenticeship at Kelsey Hayes in Romulus. I grew up in Inkster. And due to the economic climate in Michigan over the past 20 years, my parents had to move out to West Michigan and then to Indianapolis for job opportunities. But my dad still proudly wears his UAW belt and to put food on the table. I have 4 kids, 12-year-old daughter, a 7-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son, and a 4-year-old daughter. How many here have kids or grandkids? Yeah. Unfortunately, the way it's going for them to have job opportunities when they graduate from high school or college, they have to leave the state. And that's a very sad commentary of what's going on here in Michigan. I don't think any of us want that to continue. Every job matters, whether it's tax increases out of Lansing, DC, or these cap and trade scams. I call it scam and tax. We have to stop it, and we have to stop it now. You know, this is really about money and control over your lives and control over your money, the money that you work very hard to earn. The World Bank estimates that the carbon market is over $64 billion. Now, do you think that's going to benefit any of you out there? No. It's going to benefit those on Wall Street. And we already know what Washington thinks of Wall Street. They've chosen hundreds of billions for bank bailouts over and just very little, billions for auto companies. So we know where they stand. We know where they stand on these issues. I want to talk a little bit about what Barack Obama has said about cap and trade. A quote that he gave last year: under my plan of cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Businesses would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that cost on consumers. What do you think about that? Now, we have over a 200-year supply of coal here in this country, and I'd like to share with you what President Obama said about the coal industry. If somebody wants to build a coal plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they are going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted. What do you think about that? Here in Michigan, 86.6% of our fuel is based on carbon. This bill, as passed the House, will cause gas prices to go up 58%, electricity rates by 90%. Do anybody here want to pay more for their electricity? No! For their gas? No! Well, they did a poll, Rasmussen. 10% of the public said they would pay more than $100 a year for energy for cap and trade. 22% said they'd pay $100, and 56% said they wouldn't pay a dime more. 11% were undecided. So we need to talk to our friends because 1 in 10 are undecided. Well, the Heritage Foundation did a study, and they estimate that in Michigan, for the average family of 4, this will cost nearly $3,000 a year in increased cost to your family. Ooh, yes, yes. Yeah, there are a lot of studies out there about jobs, and here in Michigan, every job matters. And, you know, it's interesting, they always hold out Spain as one of these countries where they implemented cap and trade, and it's making a difference. Well, let's talk about the difference that it made in Spain, according to the University of Rey Juan Carlos. For every job created in the green industry, it cost the government $750,000. Wow. For every green megawatt job produced, it costs 5.5 jobs lost in the private economy. Is that the kind of change we want here in America? No! And even more interesting, you know what happened to carbon emissions in Spain? They went up 50%. That's cap and trade for you. What can you do? Well, we're winning this battle. It passed the House, just barely passed the House, 219 to 212. 8 Republicans voted yes, 44 Democrats voted no.
Traitors.
They're listening to those lobbyists, taxpayer-funded lobbyists, too much. So that's why you guys have to speak up. Luckily, this train is slowing down. We have them on the defensive, we have them on the run. And a lot of people are focused on healthcare, but we really have to refocus on this bill because this will affect every single area of our lives.